everyone. We're going to let everyone log in for a second. I expected a bit of a load screen, so if you saw that, but we're, going to do the typical thing of everyone logging in. But, thank you again for joining us. I feel like lately I'm seeing a lot of repeat names on the attendee list. So I'm glad that Breaking the Glass has become one of your big sources for webinar content as well. So thank you again for that. We're going to wait till we hit 40 or 50 or so, and then we'll get started. It's loading up pretty well, and our speakers are so excited to bring this topic to y'all and have this great discussion. And the world is the world right now, so we definitely need this convo right now. So yeah, we've flatlined, and obviously anyone can join on when they're ready, but I will go ahead and get us started. So my name is Elizabeth Lamb. I am the Partnerships Manager for Breaking the Glass. Again, we're so excited to be here with our amazing panelists. They will all provide their introductions. But for those of you who this is your first time joining a Breaking the Glass program, we are a women's career development and diversity and inclusion initiative founded by the technical recruitment company Computer Futures. What started as a grassroots organization first in the Austin, Texas area has now become a national program where we have partnerships with organizations like Visa, Charles Schwab, Walmart, Intel, Charter Communications. So it's really great to work alongside all those great organizations. So thank you again for anyone who has ever worked with us from a corporate capacity. What we do is we will go in with our partners to develop personalized programming based on their own goals. And then, yeah, we develop those and bring it all together. So if you're ever interested in getting involved with Breaking the Glass, don't hesitate to reach out to me. I will be providing my contact information as well. But yeah, as we get started along the webinar, there is a Q&A box at the bottom. So if you have any questions along the way that you'd love our attendees or our panelists to answer at the end, we'll definitely see those there. And I'll be monitoring the chat and look out for some really valuable information to come through there as well. But after that, I'm going to go ahead and take myself off the screen, and I'll let Courtney, our moderator, kick us off.
Perfect. Well, thank you, Elizabeth, and thank you for everyone who's tuning in, and then, of course, our panelists. I'm going to go ahead and start with some intros, and then we'll kind of go from there. So I'm Courtney Phipps. I've been with Computer Futures for about, I think, 9 or 10 months now as a Salesforce.com recruitment consultant in our Washington, D.C. office. I'm previously from a medical background. So I've really been working to kind of focus on the HLS fields as well as the Carolinas, which I've been loving. It's a little bit of home. And I think this panel was very exciting for me and really personal. I've struggled from anxiety for a few years, and I know that I've had to take a lot of kind of breaks during this time and really separate work and home life. So I'm excited to hear from our panelists. Micaela, I will go ahead and throw it over to you.
Okay, thank you so much for the introduction and for including me in this wonderful panel. For those of you, well, I don't really know anybody on this. We've had a chance to chat a little bit beforehand with the panelists, so that was been kind of nice to get to know each other a little bit. But I am a senior job program manager at IBM. I've been there for the last 5 years and have focused my attention around helping teams do their best work and become really great, developers and become innovative and things like that. I'm very interested in how people work and how they think and how they learn. And that's something that is just on the top of my mind. I have 2 kids. One is celebrating her birthday today. She turned 16 today, so that will be, I know what I was doing 16 years ago today. And then I have another 26-year-old who is currently studying physics at Texas State in San Marcos. I'm also a dog mom. I have 2 dogs, so if you hear sudden barking, that's probably mine, and I will hit mute so that you don't have to listen to the random barking, but I'm really appreciative of being included. One other sort of personal note is that I actually have ADHD, which actually impacts anxiety in ways that I never even realized that it did, and how it kind of impacted me in my life. And so, mental load is a very, very big topic in our household when we talk about that, because both my girls also have ADHD. So, it's kind of a common thing to discover you have it when you find out that your kids have it. So I'm really excited to be part of this panel.
Thank you, Micaela, for sharing that. That's really awesome to hear that from you, and tell your 16-year-old happy birthday. Maria, we'll go ahead and pass it over to you.
Hello, everyone. I am so excited to be here. Any conversations around mental health are extremely dear to me. I am the program manager at the Entrepreneurs Foundation, which is in Austin, Texas. It's extremely hot here right now for those of you that may not be in the area. But at the Entrepreneurs Foundation, we work with startups and tech companies in Austin to build their community engagement and philanthropy initiatives. We are also working on an event called Culturati Live, which takes place monthly and started due to COVID because we wanted to still keep our participants interactive and engaged with what we had going on in our organization. And that has conversations around everything relating to company culture and what's happening today with the most pressing topics. I'm also the founder of Hearts to Heal, which is a nonprofit based in Texas that provides mental health and wellness strategies within communities of color and with military affiliated individuals. My experience with mental health is more so in the grief and loss space. I lost my partner in 2018 to cancer and my grandmother to cancer in 2012, and I was their primary caregiver for both of those incidents. So to me, talking about grief and loss in the workplace is extremely important because none of us are exempt from loss, and that can take place with many forms, not just the physical loss of organization, loss of scheduling, all the things that are taking place with all the lifestyle changes due to COVID. So I'm extremely excited to be here and have this conversation to let everyone know that we're all dealing with the same things and help them push through another day. So thank you.
Thank you for being so open, Maria. We're very excited to have you as well. Jessica, if you want to go next.
Sure. Thanks, Courtney. And thank you to Elizabeth for coordinating all of this and inviting me to the panel. I'm happy to be here today. I'm the Vice President of Strategy for Instrument, which is a digital and innovation agency based in Portland, Oregon. And my background is digital marketing, digital strategy, and also consulting, digital transformation. And I am married and have 3 children, all under the age of 10, so 9, 6, and 3. And they're probably downstairs right now. So if you hear some screaming, it is what it is, right? And I'm happy to join today to share a little bit of sort of my experience and perspective of what it's been like and what it is like to be a working mom in corporate America. And also just thinking about literally the times that we're in right now, being a Black woman in corporate America as an executive, looking at sort of the spotlight that we finally have on inclusion and diversity in the right ways, particularly when we think about racial equity in the workplace and what that means as a leader, what that means as a Black woman leader in this space, but also what it means to create space for others and bring empathy to the workplace, both as we think about mental load and also mental health for our people. So I am happy to be here today and thank you for the time.
Of course, Jessica, thank you for that. I know we're all pretty excited to kind of hear your perspective about that. So, and with that, I will throw it over to you, Jacklyn.
Thank you so much, and thank you for having me. I do seem to be having some internet connection, so apologize if I break up at all, just a forewarning. With that said, quick introduction, Jacklyn Osborne. I am the Data Quality Control Executive at Bank of America. Interesting note though, I've only been there for 2 months, so I have the pleasure of joining a new company and starting the onboarding process during COVID. I've been in the data space my entire professional career, spent some time at HSBC as the chief data officer. Prior to that, I was at UBS, and I started my career actually at the National Cybersecurity Division in DC. From a personal perspective, similar to Jessica, I too have 3 kids. One by 1 year. My oldest is 11, but my youngest is 2. So do have a big span in ages. And this topic is so near and dear to my heart, not just as a working mother, but actually a few months ago, I had the realization that I personally had hit capacity and my mental load was just too much. And it was that point of breakdown. And it was that awareness moment and that aha moment that I was able to reflect and realize that my life balance was not in balance. And I made a conscious effort to kind of get that back to balance. And I actually started a blog, 52 Weeks of Me. And it's really just to keep me accountable for that journey through self-care and that I do matter and that I do need to put my oxygen mask on. So I'm super excited to be here. So thank you so much to Elizabeth and Breaking the Glass and for my fellow panelists, and looking forward to a great session.
Awesome. Thank you, Jacklyn. I love to hear that kind of interesting perspective that you've taken with writing the blog. So I'm sure that will come up in our discussions today. So to get started, I know this question will actually relate to a lot of you. So first one, mental load is pretty much the total sum of responsibilities that you take on to manage, like the remembering of things or all that invisible work. And of course, working parents know the feeling all too well, especially since like social distancing and quarantine's been going on. So how did the mental load change once the stay-at-home orders began? Jessica, I'm going to throw that over to you since I know you mentioned you had a few kids.
Yes. How did it change? I think it magnified by tenfold. You know, we as you know, working parents are already managing a lot between homework and school and drop off and pick up and extracurricular activities and, you know, all of those things. And then you have your day job and then you have your family, right? You have all these sort of bubbles that are interacting. And then you layer on a pandemic of everybody stuck at home. Oh my goodness, how do I make sure we not just stay home, but stay safe and stay healthy? And then you layer on work from home, which, you know, the majority of the world was not doing. And all of the things that are required to go along with that. So it absolutely magnified. And I found myself just really struggling with just trying to make it through the day, right? You've got kids, they need to eat, they're always hungry, right? So they always have to eat. And you have conference calls, and you're also not only dealing with what you're responsible for, you're also trying to support your people as well at work because they're all dealing with different things. They all have people who might be affected by COVID, who might be affected by, you know, their parents are, you know, losing jobs or out of work. And so it just magnified, and it really sort of feels very much like a pressure cooker. And I had a moment, I think probably 3 or 4 weeks ago, maybe a little similar to you, Jacklyn, where it was just all too much. And I had to raise my hand and say, I need to take off a week to just be home, to spend time with my kids, to spend time with my mental space. And to just be, right, to disconnect completely and to just be. And I recognize that that's a privilege that a lot of other folks don't have, but if you have that privilege, if you have that time, you have to take it. And one of the things I ultimately wound up doing, because I took the time, I was able to set the example for others on my team and within my organization that it was also okay, because we live with all this guilt of not checking boxes, not doing everything. I'm not taking care of my kids. I'm not taking care of myself. I'm not taking care of my partner. I'm not taking care of my people. And sometimes that's okay. You have to prioritize yourself. And by me giving myself the license to do that, I was able to at least sort of set up an example and hopefully encourage others to do the same as well.
Perfect. Thank you, Jessica, for that. I know that I, of course, don't have any kids at the moment, so I'm not too familiar with that, but I'm sure we can throw it over to Micaela, since you have a birthday today in your house. I'm sure that's been interesting.
Yeah, I think I really love, Jessica, that you mentioned there. So there are two things that kind of popped out in terms of what you were saying, which was, one was that you were setting a good example for the people that report to you, but then just from a leadership perspective of walking the walk, right? And that's hard to do. And you mentioned the other word, guilt. So guilt and shame, I think, go hand in hand with the experiences that we have with regards to mental load. And so one of the things I think that's been, you know, a helpful exercise for me is to understand, you know, is that guilt and or embarrassment or whatever, is it relevant? Should I feel guilty about something? Should I not feel guilty about something? And then really learning how to cut myself some slack, to know that I'm not perfect and it is okay for me to not be perfect and to not get it right. So a good example today, my daughter's birthday, and I dropped the ball on a couple things. And so I'm scrambling at the last minute. Fortunately, she's just hanging out in her room and she's fine. But, you know, I had wanted to do some things specific, and it's taking me a minute to kind of pull myself together to get there. And so, you know, I think for me, that has been sort of a learning lesson here, is to really just give myself permission to not be perfect, right? And not to have these expectations of myself, and not to feel guilty about taking the necessary time. I, like you, Jessica, I also did take a step back. I had gotten completely out of whack, out of balance, and it was a real struggle at one point. And so I took a couple of days off to just reset myself, and took a step away from the news, from work, from everything, and really I just read books. That's really was all I wanted to do. And so that was a really nice break for me, an important acknowledgement to actually do that.
Perfect. Thank you, Micaela. Does anyone else have anything else to add to that?
I think the only thing I would add, because I think both Micaela and Jessica hit on it, but that it's
Jacklyn, can you hear us? Well, looks like her internet went out. I know she mentioned that in the beginning. So hopefully we can get that, she can get that fixed and we can hear from her. In the meantime, we can go ahead and move on to the next one. So a counter argument of mental load is, why don't you just ask for help? And we all know that, like, even asking and providing instructions can take time. So what can we do to make the invisible mental load more visible, or create processes where we don't have to ask for help? Maria, if we can go ahead and hear from you.
And I think it's just, one, it's hard to ask for help because it's associated with being weak, when it's really not. It shows a lot of strength to be vulnerable and put yourself in a situation to say, hey, I'm struggling with something, whatever that may be. I don't have any children on that capacity, but I know for parents, it's kind of like, I want my work to be priority and I want my children to be priority, but I don't want either one to think that I'm thinking less of them, right? And so for that component, I would just say, one, try to be as subtly transparent as you can for what makes you comfortable. To say, it's been a tough week this week. My kids are in summer camp, or their summer camps were canceled. And sometimes just throwing in what's happening in your life is another way to highlight, hey, just check on me a little bit more. And I think for the individuals that run teams and have employees or colleagues that they have to manage, really just having a transparent conversation to say, we are in a different space to where we now are in communication more than we have been before. And I think people are starting to get more comfortable talking to each other, because sometimes we might hop on a video conference call and it's still early in the morning and we're like, I don't quite have my blazer on or my earrings like I would if I'm walking into the workplace. And so it kind of brings people down to that human connection to say, oh, wow, you are like me. Because when we go into the office, we're usually suited and booted, ready to go, and kind of we interact at the water cooler. But now it seems like there's so many meetings that happen virtually, and we're connecting in a way that we haven't before. So I would just say, kind of throw out and hint what's happening in your life, and even tell a story about the weekend. And sometimes people will pick up, oh, she does have kids at home, or she is a part of, community organizations. And then also pay attention to what's happening in the media. There, as Jessica has alluded to, there are a lot of racial and social injustices taking place, and that is putting a heavy burden on not just the Black community, but everyone. We're all seeing this on the news, and seeing so much loss happening. And so sometimes it's just necessary to put the elephant in the room and have an opportunity for transparent and honest conversation to take place. I would also encourage companies that or managers, if there's a way to kind of have like an anonymous Dropbox to where someone could kind of put what they're experiencing or what they're feeling, and then really regulate the frequency of meetings if they're necessary, and kind of evaluate that amongst your group. So I would say just kind of share a little bit more about yourself for those undertones and context clues of what's happening in your life. Understand that we're all human and we're all experiencing something, and your experience might help someone else. So be transparent and just share a little bit more about your life, even though it's hard. I'm just a transparent person in general, so.
Maria, I absolutely love that. I think that being transparent and honest is just, I feel like it's opening up a lot more like discussions within companies. And I know a lot of companies are implementing these things. So thank you for your perspective on that. Jacklyn, hopefully your internet is back on. You want to go ahead and answer this one?
So can you guys hear me? Am I back? I'm so sorry about that. I think for me, what I was going to say is the key thing is the being able to ask for help, right? Knowing that you're not in it alone, whether it's everyone has their desire to be perfect or to do everything. But I think the going back to what Maria says, the elephant, we can't do everything. And I think COVID kind of put that to a test with impacting our outsourcing services, right? Not being able to have childcare, or the social stigma of having your house cleaned. And I think for me, the big thing I would leave this with is you do you, and that there are some times that we just have to make the choices that are best from us, and we just have to accept what others are feeling and how others are doing. And that's been a really big one for me in trying to cope and kind of work through things.
Thank you, Jacklyn. Yeah, I feel like that's definitely kind of something that everyone's been trying to do. I know that we have kind of made a lot more, like, I guess, resources available. And I know I've definitely had to take some days where I'm just like, okay, this is getting too much. Like, I need to take a step back and just kind of separate myself from work. So I definitely understand that. Anyone else have anything to add to that one?
Yeah, if you don't mind, I just wanted to kind of, one of the things that to me has struck me about the experience of transitioning and having so many of us who are working from home and able to work from home, the humanizing level that things have gone through. Like, my CEO was, or my president of my company was on a call, and his kid interrupted, asking a homework question. And so being able to see our leaders having similar experiences to what we're experiencing, not only humanized them, but it also made me feel better in the sense that, oh, okay, I'm not the only one juggling all of these things. I also think of, like, the talk show hosts, in particular, Jimmy Fallon, whose kids are constantly interrupting. And I was just like, that's our lives now. And this is something that we can actually, be okay with, and just sort of seeing that it's really made that a bit more humanizing in a way. And I think that's also mentally contributed to a level of empathy around the situation with Black Lives Matter and, policing and things like that. And so I think for me, that to me, I think is opened people's eyes in ways I don't think that they were there, because now all of a sudden we're in the same boat. Like literally, there's nothing that we can do differently. And we're all sort of experiencing very, very similar things. And so just having that empathy for each other and knowing that, like, hey, we're really in this together. And the only way we're going to get through this is honestly together.
And I'd also love to add, Courtney, too. I know we're, several of us are moms here, and, we're talking obviously from our personal perspectives of having children, but also recognizing that folks who don't have partners or folks who do not have children, right? One of my mentors has this phrase of, we're all busy. We're all just busy doing different things. And as I think about load and mental load, we all have mental loads and have loads. Our loads are just all different, right? So what I think is also important to remember is that, folks who have been alone or single in their home are craving even the most solitary folks are craving human contact, and they have their own things that they are worried about as well. So one of the things for me as a leader has been making sure that we think about equity and how we support everyone. Yes, there's a lot of emphasis on parenting and the load and what's required around that, but there's so many other things that people are responsible for and have mental load and need support with, and just being really thoughtful around the equity of how you support everyone, because just because someone doesn't have children or lives alone doesn't mean that they don't have a host of things that they are concerned about, worried about, parents, safety, security, right? They're having a lot of the same challenges that everyone else is having.
Perfect, Jessica. No, I definitely loved kind of that you mentioned like catering to everyone's different needs a little bit. I know that personally I'm extremely extroverted, so luckily I have a fiance who gets to listen to all my chat. But I know that like a lot of companies are doing like, the virtual happy hours and just trying to include everyone, so that even like people who, like you said, are alone, they're able to like still kind of have some kind of human contact. So for the next one, this one was actually submitted by someone. So whoever submitted this, thank you. So sometimes with a lot going on, you can feel like things are coming from all different directions at 100 miles an hour. Sometimes people will shut down and crash before they can react because it's too overwhelming to tackle it. Do you have any tips for combating the urge to crash? Whoever wants to start off that one.
I'll start. I think, well, one, just from a leadership perspective, this is a personal experience. So my supervisor, he had been paying attention to the media and everything that was taking place with all the racial tension and everything that we know that's happening, right? So not to put too much emphasis on it. And he transparently just sent me a text and said, wow, I know there's a lot going on. Like, how are you doing with this? And let's push some of the deadlines, back. And for me, that for me showed a lot, because that was conscious leadership to say, I'm paying attention what's happening around and what's happening in the world, and let me check on the individuals that are helping to move this organization forward. And I am a Black woman in my organization, and we're seeing a lot of that. And so I think one is just conscious leadership to recognize what's happening around you, and again, just having that transparent conversation to take place. So that's one thing I would say, just from a leadership perspective, is be conscious and don't be afraid to ask questions or comment some things that might make you uncomfortable. Sometimes that uncomfortable conversation can help someone not get to that burnout perspective. But for yourself, if you are experiencing that need for a crash or burnout, one, just being transparent again and saying, I just need a break to offload for a second, because no one can read your mind. And a lot of times we're in our own bubble sometimes, and we're just going that sometimes we want to check on you, but we're just not consciously thinking about it. So I would just say the word of the day, well, I guess it's a phrase, just be conscious. So.
Perfect. No, I really do think that you have a really good point with that being transparent, being conscious and honest is just really important during this time. Anyone else would like to add on to that?
I've got one, and I think for me this was so critical because as the days went on and the return to normal didn't come, and the cleaner and the childcare and the worker and the employee kind of tagged on, what I realized was that I needed some me time. So I actually carved out a morning routine where, yes, it means I get up early, and yes, it means I might snooze, but I set my alarm an hour and a half before I need to be up, just so that I can have that time to work out, to get the day set up, to ground myself. I even do a slight bit of meditation, and I find that really helps to keep me grounded and to remain focused, because I know that at a minimum, no matter what happens throughout the day, whoever takes the time away, I've had that time to myself and I've gotten my priorities out of the way.
I absolutely love that you mentioned morning routine. I think that is incredibly important. I know that I like to do my morning crossword puzzle to kind of get myself set up for the day. Has anyone else, I guess, kind of put something in like their schedule like that?
So this is one that actually came up yesterday. This isn't something I've incorporated, but I thought it was an interesting practice, and it kind of goes along the lines of, don't be surprised at how really small things can actually influence your capacity to be able to deal with load in general and to be able to have that balance within your life. And so one of the practices that a colleague does is he actually, there is usually transition time when you have to commute to a job, right? And so you're going from one thing to the next. And so oftentimes I use that to listen to books on tape, or to listen to the radio, or to just get collect my thoughts if I had to jump into a meeting right when I got into the office. And so one of the things he did that I thought was fabulous was that he actually drives to work, but he drives about 2 miles away and then 2 miles back in the morning. And that's his transition time. It's a way of bookending his day. So he starts his day literally by driving. He doesn't go anywhere. He just like drives a couple miles, drives around the block, and then comes back home. But it's really a way of sort of blocking off that time. And so whatever mechanisms that you have to create those boundaries for yourself and those reminders, you know, that, hey, I've got to start something and stop something and give myself the transitions I need. You know, as an agile coach, I'm constantly harping on the concept that there is no such thing as multitasking. That does not exist. It's called task switching. And your brain is literally going from one thing to the next thing. And each time you do that, you lose productivity and you lose time. That also includes transition time. And so there is some transition that needs to happen before you start your day and when you end your day, so that you're able to engage meaningfully. And that's just a little bit of taking care of yourself. And he said it's a 10-minute drive. Like that's all he's trying to do, is just create those boundaries. And so I thought that was a neat sort of practice. I don't know that I'll do that, but I thought that would be sort of like a unique way to share if somebody wants to do something along those lines.
Jessica, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, I was just gonna add, I think, two things. One is, could piggyback on a little bit of some of the threads here, is automation. Automate whatever you can. We're all digital all the time now. So whether it's reminder apps or a task list, or even just like old school create calendar invites to remind you to do things or remember to do things. I've gotten a lot more organized, at least digitally, to try, because I'm not only just managing myself, I'm managing the kids and what's my husband doing and my mom, like trying to coordinate all of that. And then going back to prioritization, right? What is most important for you at that moment, at that time, and learning to let some stuff go. Just, you gotta let it go. So those would be some of my quick hit tips that I would say.
Perfect. I definitely love that you mentioned the calendar. I think that organizing it that way, and even just putting in things for yourself, is a really good way to make sure you aren't too overwhelmed, and you're also like staying on your task and making sure you're getting everything done. So I know that I'm just watching the time right now, so I did want to go ahead and move on to probably the last question, which I'm very interested to hear this from y'all's perspective, especially since you guys have been managing a team. So managing a remote team involves a bunch of like invisible work that can quickly become a serious issue when working with remotely. With relationships being managed across various cities and time zones, how are you building a team or in team like empathy and sparking joy while managing all of that work? I'll go ahead and pass this over probably back to Jessica.
All right, I'll kick us off. I think for me, we've been doing a few things. So I've increased the amount of one-on-ones that I'm having with people, even if it's just a 15 to 20 minute check-in, that are also not just focused on the work, right? Let's just check in. How are you doing? How's your family? How's children, the dogs, right? Whatever, what are you watching on TV or books or something that just, again, that piece around listening and building that empathy and letting you know that you're there as a leader, not just in work, you're there for the whole person and not just about work. And then we've been doing a lot of the virtual stuff that I know a lot of other places are doing. We've been doing daily prompts or weekly prompts where people can say, you know, what did you want to be when you grew up, when you were a child? What did you want to grow up to be, right? And looking at the differences between what people wanted to be and what, well, obviously what they're doing now. You know, if you were a rock star, you know, if a celebrity was going to play you in your biopic, what celebrity would that be? And that's been a lot of fun to not just bring a little bit of sparkle and brightness to people's day, but also, again, a little bit of a window into what people like, what they're thinking, what they're feeling. And then we've been doing a lot of virtual celebrations of like anniversaries and birthdays at the organization. And so we've been creating special like Spotify playlists, right? What's a song that reminds you of this person? And then they create it off on the side. And then you get this nice little package or a little video that makes you feel loved. And those have been things that we've been doing of just sort of little touch points here and there. You know, Micaela, you'd mentioned about sometimes it's the small things that can have a big impact. And those things we found are really helping people sort of stay tethered to each other, especially in this time where all we have is this and a camera.
So I would love to kind of jump in here. This is something that I am super passionate about in terms of, you know, facilitation in general is an art form as well as a discipline, and it requires a lot of practice. And so knowing that you have, you're able to create connections, and the why is that you're creating connections with other people are really important. And so I have a little, I call this my like meeting Bible, but it's called The Art of Gathering. I don't know if anybody has seen this or read this, but it is a fantastic book. Priya Parker is an author who her experience is actually in conflict resolution and reconciliation. And so she wrote this book to sort of illustrate the fact that, you know, we often have these ceremonies that we do and they just become part of a process and they get driven by the process or what needs to happen, as opposed to why are we even getting together in the first place. And so, you know, it's important for us to remember that why are we here? Why are we meeting? And so adding a component of empathy that allows us to connect with one another is a really important element for us to you know, make sure that people are feeling heard. It also builds trust. It builds transparency. And at a time like this, I think we need that now probably more than ever. And I suspect that's probably why so many organizations are currently beginning to focus in on that. So, you know, I highly recommend, if you haven't had a chance to get this book, I have, you know, tags and things highlighted in it. I use exercises in it. But one of the things in there too that she mentions, and I thought this was kind of an amazing sort of concept, which is, you know, we think about, so it's my daughter's birthday today, right? And so in thinking about her and her birth and all of this other kind of stuff, we celebrate birthdays because we're supposed to, or because it's expected, or because it's another year, as opposed to what is it that makes me me today, and how am I different than I was a year ago? And then what does tomorrow look like for me in terms of the kind of person that I want to become? What are the things that I want to do in my life? And so this is a way of really kind of understanding that what we've done, the person that we were yesterday is different than the person we are today. And you know, it's an evolution. And I think that kind of helps us connect with each other in really meaningful ways. And, you know, and then it's okay to be silly sometimes. You know, we don't have to be focusing in on all the stuff that's hard and difficult and you know, is challenging, but also, you know, that silliness is an important element for us to do that. We have to take care of ourselves and our mental capacity to be able to do that. Otherwise we can't maintain the level load and the balance. So that's just my little thing.
So thank you, Micaela. I love that you mentioned being silly. I think that's really important during this time to kind of keep everyone's spirits up. Maria or Jacklyn, do you have anything to add to that?
Yes, so our team is a little bit different. We're a small team, but like I said, we work with startups and tech companies in Austin, everything from Blackbaud to SailPoint Lab, to SailPoint to Silicon Labs. And what we kicked off or started once COVID hit was the Entrepreneurs Foundation Crisis Resource Action Team. And that was just another way to keep all of our member companies together in communication to say, we still support you during this time, even though we may not have this same amount of communication. And what came of that was really neat. It was, we've actually become closer with our member company liaisons and started almost developing what you would consider like a friendship. And even one of our attendees last time said, I just love when we have these meetings because I live by myself. I don't have any kids. I don't even have a pet. And this is my time to interact in a way that I feel is a safe and transparent space just for conversation and almost feels like a check-in for me. And so originally when COVID hit, we started that frequency bi-weekly, and we noticed that we were seeing the same reoccurring attendees and people still wanted to come in, but the bandwidth was just swamped. Everyone was trying to figure out this new normal, right? And so we have now switched that bandwidth over to monthly, and it still is neat because we still get those touch point emails, but people feel more comfortable to reach out to us for resources than I think they would have been before if we didn't have this touch point. So I would say just have an open forum sometimes for a conversation and understand that people may want to attend different things, but just may not have the bandwidth. So have that understanding too, that everyone may not attend the virtual karaoke session or the virtual book club because there might be other things going on and focusing, but at least keeping a space open for those that do want that opportunity. And one reference to Micaela, excuse me, I love how you brought up that book. I'm going to actually look that book up on Amazon. One of the speakers we had at our last Culturati Live was Jeremy Hunter. And he talked about how to be resilient during the storm. And that he had 3 principles of awareness for managing ourselves during a storm. And that was acknowledge what you are experiencing. Accepting inner experience allows it to flow. Attention needs to go somewhere. Too easy to get over-focused on the threats. How did you manage your fear? Or how is your fear managing you? And I think even having those 3 points for discussion in a group really gets people to start that transparent and honest conversation. So I would just say, keep the conversations flowing and remember, too much conversation. Some people are not extroverts like myself and Courtney, and just being aware and seeing, how your teammates flow off of each other. But I will share that link in the comment section as well. But it's a really great article on there as well through Culturati Live. So.
Thank you, Maria. I think actually Elizabeth put the link for the Art of Gathering in the chat, so thank you for that. So I know that we have a few questions that have been submitted, so I kind of want to go and do some of the Q&A. So let's see. Amelia did say, just a comment, she said, for me, it wasn't just working from home, but also becoming a homeschool teacher. Which I definitely know that a lot of people that I've been speaking to have mentioned that they're learning how to do homeschooling, which is definitely just kind of hearing what they've gone through has been kind of interesting. Does anyone, I guess, want to share like your experiences with becoming like a teacher at home?
I have one funny comment. So this is my 16-year-old whose birthday is today. The first week, I think we were home and she had to do Zoom for classes and things like that. And so we got her all set up and we did everything else. And one day she came down to me and she said, "Mom, I now understand it." And I'm like, "What is she talking about?" "Well, I understand why you're so tired when all you're doing is sitting in front of a computer all day looking at people and talking. It is exhausting and it's more tiring than going to school on a daily basis. So now I get it. You're not just sitting there. It takes a lot of energy to interact with people on the screen." And it was just like, to me, that was the funniest thing, because I was like, I didn't even realize the difference between those two things. And the perception is like, she just thought we were just sitting on our computer all day. And why are you guys so exhausted at the end of the day? And that was just a funny little kind of side note that she mentioned to me, and it just and the way she did it cracked me up too, because I'm like, oh no, what's coming next?
Oh my goodness, kids are definitely have a funny sense of humor. Jacklyn, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think this is definitely a topic near and dear to my heart. So when you're managing 3 kids of such varying levels, it's almost a divide and conquer. You can't, you're not on a man-to-man. Man-to-man is not possible when there's two of you and 3 kids, right? So for me, the main thing was trying to establish independence and trying to teach them that they had to take accountability and responsibility. And at 11 and 9, that's not that easy. But kind of what I tried to do is not overcompensate and not sit there and micromanage them, but allow them to almost make mistakes. And I'm going to be very transparent. My 11-year-old got his first D. I had never seen that before. But the good thing is, by establishing that transparency, I saw it. I was able to have the conversation with him, and we were able to kind of, apply something I used in practice at work. It's like, you've made this mistake. How do we not make it again? What do we need to correct? And I think that in itself was a huge life lesson for them, is that they are not going to always have a teacher or a parent to sit there and watch them do, and that they need to learn independence, and they need to learn, when they can take breaks and when they can, need to focus. So for me, definitely agree with the question. Homeschooling was a challenge, but I almost use it as an opportunity to say, what life skills can I teach them above and beyond the math, social studies, science, etc.
Jacklyn, I absolutely love that. I think that, of course, them learning responsibility, especially at that age, is just, I think everyone's kind of seen that, in their kids as well. So next question, we're going to move on. Kimberly Davis submitted. She said, can you share what your partners did that was helpful to you in getting a break or relief from your mental load? She said, my wife carries the higher mental load between us, and I don't want to be the girl who just lets her do that. I want to be a good partner without asking her to manage me too. Maria, do you want to start us off on this one?
Well, I don't have anyone at home like that, but mine would be my mom, who sometimes takes a lot of my mental load. And so we've kind of established this frequency of a schedule to where we just offload. It's usually I set a schedule as well to where I have a morning walk, and I also schedule at lunchtime, to, if I were in the office, taking that lunchtime. So those are the 2 touch points that I call her and say, okay, it's been just a heavy week. Do you have time to listen to me really quickly? And she'll usually respond with, yes, but I only have this amount of time, or no, can you call me tomorrow? And so I just think establishing those boundaries too, to understand that we're all experiencing things, and saying just straight up, do you have time to hear what I'm dealing with? And then scheduling just some you time with that person to just maybe watch a movie or something like that. So yeah, sorry, it wasn't too much perspective from the in-house.
No, oh my goodness, I loved that point, especially about checking in with your parents. I know that I've done that a lot lately, which has kind of just made everyone closer. So I definitely love that you mentioned that. Jessica, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, so my partner, my husband, it keeps me nice supplies of wine and cheese, which are my small moments, especially to close out the day or close out the week, really fancy stinky cheese and delicious Cabernet Sauvignons. But I think some of the things, again, like I talked about the automation and the calendaring, I used to do a lot of like the scheduling or follow-ups or whatever those things may be. And he has been amazing and just taking a lot of that on. I'll say, oh my gosh, I need to do this. He'll say, I got it. Or we need to order this for the kids. And I'm usually like the queen of Amazon ordering everything. And he's like, nope, I got it. Nope, I got it. Right. So, and he'll do it right away. Whereas it'll wind up somewhere on that list that I talked about, maybe kind of down at the bottom. And he just takes care of it. And so that for me has been immensely helpful to literally be able to clear mental space and clear shelf space immediately. I need to do this, or we need to do this, or the kids need this. I got it. No problem. Boom. Take it. And also just saying, what can I do? How can I help you? Right? Recognizing that in the society we live in the world that we live in the role and the job that I have every day, there's always a little bit of an imbalance. Just literally asking me almost every week or every other day, what can I help you with? What can I take off your plate? And there's the, love language, right? And for me, one of my love languages is helping me get stuff done. And so that is, he knows it. And that's one of his ways of showing love is just literally asking me, what can I do, or what can I take off your plate?
I have one sort of thing. Oh, sorry.
Oh, no, go ahead.
So I like the way, Kimberly, that you phrased the question with regards to, you want to be a good partner without asking her to manage you too, right? And that is a really difficult balance to strike. And I think there is oftentimes, at least in my relationship with my husband, and even actually my daughters as well, there's times where they're carrying more of the load than I am, and vice versa. And so that will kind of vary and ebb and flow. And so one of the practices that we got, that we started doing was, comes out of sort of Agile, which is at the end of the week or at the end of the day, we would actually have a retrospective. How did things go? What went well? What didn't go well? And, were there some things that we might want to sort of do differently? And as part of this, it's opened up a conversation. It's a forum for opening up a conversation without anybody feeling like they have to run into each other and to go tell each other that we're annoyed with something, or that, we really just need some help, or we're feeling overwhelmed. And it also forces you to be a bit more conscious about the choices that you're making together as a team. And that's kind of how I think of it, right? This is my home team, and this is how we're going to kind of operate. And I think it's important for us to kind of share that information. And one of the things that surfaced was that I was getting really resentful of doing dishes all the time, like all the dishes. And even though the perception was, I felt like I was carrying this load, that whether that was reality or not is different. This is just my perception. And so we're very clear about, this is just my perception. This is not about what's happening or real or not real. This is just how I'm feeling right at the moment. And so what we did is we broke up the responsibilities for certain things, because then that opened up other people feeling like, well, I'm feeling like I'm doing everything else. And so we actually created sort of a chart to help us determine and split up chores so that it didn't feel so onerous on one person or another, and that we weren't developing resentment. So a good mechanism to do that is some form of, how's the week going? And here's some things I noticed about what we were doing, and then give them something to react to, as opposed to asking them to tell you. Because sometimes, my husband will do that to me, and I'm just like, don't ask me any more questions. I can't answer. My decision-making capacity is done. It's not happening at 5 o'clock at night. I don't care about dinner at this particular moment. We got to decide that in the morning, kind of thing. So yeah.
No, that is absolutely such a good point. I know that personally, usually my fiance carries more of the load at work, and usually I carry a lot of it at home. And so now during quarantine, it's been switched. So it's really exciting to, I think, see him kind of take on these like new hobbies, new projects during the day. And we've definitely like seen each other's perspectives on a lot of things, which has opened up like so many, like, I guess, just more open communication. And I think that's definitely kind of, I don't know, I feel like it's been very exciting for me to kind of be like the one who's doing all of the work, because I really like it. But I want to go on to the next one. So this is from Anonymous. So great points on being transparent and honest and checking in on people. I'm a leader of a team who already did this and has increased efforts around these points now that everyone's worked from home. What do you recommend when this isn't reflected by the board or management level above you? What about when the business stance is to not care too much about the people who work for you, despite influencing and negotiating around how important it is to do that? Jacklyn, do you want to go ahead and start us off?
Sure, and you know, I almost, I'm sad, almost an unfortunate position. I would hope that the managers, I know my company, if anything, has kind of done the exact opposite and went all to, you know, safety first, health and safety. So that is unfortunate of a position where business ends. I'm just to quote, not to care too much. I think you just need to do you, right? I don't think that there's ever bad in caring about people, as long as you're delivering and doing what's on, not an or. I think if your core is telling you, which I would agree with that core, is to be you know, it might just be doing it on your own time. Just make sure you continue to allow the bosses to see what they want to see, but you can continue.
Courtney, you're on
Thank you.
mute.
Oh goodness. So I was saying, I know we're running a little bit low on time, but does anyone have anything they want to add to what Jacklyn said?
Yeah, so just really briefly, this is one that I think is a difficult one to overcome and manage. And I think, you know, two things to think about is, you know, your leadership, they're people too. And I think that what this tells me is they're afraid. They're afraid if they care too much, then they can't do the things that they need to do in order to get the job done. And so, you know, the tendency is to create to armor up and to create walls and barriers and things like that. And so my recommendation is there's a couple books out by Brene Brown. One of them is Dare to Lead. I highly recommend getting that book because that'll help you understand better what's happening within your organization and some of the behaviors, armored behaviors that you're seeing. And then you can leverage the tools that are in that book to help you navigate that. So this is a much bigger issue. I don't think any of us can really answer this question in and of itself by itself, but I highly recommend getting a copy of that book and leveraging what's in there to help you sort of, you know, shift that culture. And it's going to take time. And that's the only thing to do that. Just be empathetic even to your leaders, because sometimes they're human and they don't understand a lot of things sometimes. And it's really scary to be emotional, because that's a vulnerable place to be, because that means people can actually hurt you if you are vulnerable and you share those emotions.
Thank you so much for adding that, Micaela. And I know I definitely want to check out that book, so thanks for the recommendation. We had a ton of more questions that were submitted, so I apologize we didn't get time to answer all of them, but I know that we definitely want to email those out and kind of see if you guys will answer them later. But I just want to say thank you to all of you, everyone who's joined from home, and then of course our panelists for joining us today. So I will pass it back over to Elizabeth.
Thank you, Courtney. And yeah, thank you again to all our panelists for joining us today. I really appreciate it. You know, I probably say this on all the webinars, but I really miss that there's like not the big round of applause that happens at the end of a session, because it's such a finalizing moment. But, you know, you see all the questions come through, and I hope that y'all really did enjoy your experience. Attendees, you know, thank you so much for joining us week after week. I know that you get inundated with a lot of information from me, so I'm glad it's always helpful. Like I said, I'm an email away, I'm a LinkedIn message away, so if you ever want to get in touch, get involved with Breaking the Glass, just come find me, or I'll come find you. That's how all these speakers ended up on this panel. But yeah, what I would recommend is follow our LinkedIn page. That's where you will get the best up-to-date information. Additionally, I will be sending out a follow-up email with a link to the recording of this webinar, so you can share that with anyone who you think might find this helpful, and then you'll be directed to our website, sign up for our newsletter, and yeah, I'm going to wrap up, giving you a complete commercial interruption at the end of this. But again, thank you so much. And I hope that you all have a great rest of your afternoon, and same to you speakers. Give you a little round of
Thank
applause.
you.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody. Thank you for
Thanks,
sharing
guys.
the time with us.
everybody.
And thanks, panelists. It's nice meeting
Thank
you. I
you.
hope we get to do this again soon.
Yeah. Thank you,
everyone.
Courtney. Appreciate it. Thank you, Elizabeth. Bye,
Of
guys.
course.
Bye.
Thank you, guys.
Great, bye. Thank you. I'm going to close this down.